The Call of the Forest, first published in serial form in the Sunday Evening Post magazine in 1903, and in the same year in a single volume by Macmillan and Company Publishing House, is a novel set in the wilds of far North America. The story tells the adventures of the dog Buck and his friend John Thornton. The two share exceptional experiences and adventures related to Gold Rush, during which Buck saves his master's life several times. The movie was published in 2020 and it was directed by Chris Sanders. It recalls the novel's settings and brings them to the big screen in modern key, attempting to give a new perspective to a tale that has accompanied the adolescence of millions of readers and adventure fans. The movie, initially set in late 19th century California, follows the story of Buck, a dog who gets kidnapped by gold diggers and taken to the Alaskan wilderness. These prospectors from the Klondike, specifically from the Yukon region of Western Canada, lock the poor dog in a cage, forcing him to undergo a very strict training, often using violence against him. The movie is set during the gold rush in the Klondike, when there was a great demand for sled dogs, the only means of transport to get around that cold and snowy region. After many problems and changes, Buck learns how to survive in that wild world. The movie shows the way in which a pack of dogs manages to dictate a kind of social hierarchy. For this reason, Buck becomes the leader of his pack after eliminating his rivals, but after the dog has fulfilled his task and is no longer useful to the prospectors, he gets sold, and on one of the journeys with his new masters, he ends up in the camp of the hermit John Thornton, who saves him from a cruel fate. In John, Buck will find a true friend, and the movie, from this point on, will focus on the concept of friendship between man and animal. Buck will become for John what he never found in a society made up of men and from which he decided to escape. Call of the Forest is a movie that tells a great story of friendship that transcends the boundaries of belonging and is reflected in a broad concept of brotherhood. In the movie, dog and man are linked by an invisible thread that contributes to a relationship of respect. Buck and John live the adventure of their lives together, realizing how important collaboration is for accomplishing great goals. Sanders' movie is very similar to Jack London's novel, although there is something in the movie setup that does not fully convince the eye of the most attentive viewer. The CGI used in the film to create the protagonist of the story, Buck, fails to be perfect and often disappoints. In fact, it almost makes it difficult to watch the movie. While watching the scenes, Buck does not fully integrate himself with the surrounding landscape. This is the initial stumbling block with the CGI. After a few minutes of viewing, the viewer's eye gets used to Buck's digital presence, even if there is always something wrong. This should not, however, stigmatize the final product, because the story is interesting and somehow holds its own against London's great classic. Also, the transposition of a great literary classic is always a challenge, and in this case, the film version is very sweetened compared to London's novel, which shows in a more gory way the tales of the brave dog Buck. The story of friendship between Buck and John recalls centuries and centuries of world literature history. The history of search dogs, in fact, begins about 20,000 years ago, when these animals began to be domesticated because man was interested in exploiting their incredible sense of smell and their skills for search, loyalty, and endurance, combined with physical strength. For this reason, The Call of the Forest explores a very significant theme for mankind and literature, the relationship between man and his best friend. In some scenes of the movie, we see all the potential of a great story of friendship, as told in the novel, which unfortunately is not realized 100%, but which in any case manages to involve the viewer. To support Buck's digital interpretation, there is an excellent Harrison Ford, who plays the role of John Thornton, a great romantic character, who still believes in a life on the edge, at the edge of the known earth. a life devoted to search for himself and the world around him. The Call of the Forest is a good movie and deserves to be seen and appreciated, especially by a young audience. The story holds its own against Jack London's great literary classic and does not revolutionize the plot. On the contrary, it tries to add something, also thanks to the use of technology. Unfortunately, like all pioneering experiences, there are still a few things to revise, but the story succeeds in making one forget a few technical issues related to the CGI realization. The performance of the actors, and Harrison Ford in particular, manages to give the viewer incredible emotions and transport him to a time far, both physically and morally. Seeing people exploit animals is something inconceivable to us today. Knowing the background of a practice that was unfortunately very common succeeds in making us appreciate the friendship of our four-legged friends even more.